Welcome to jazztime.com. Jazztime.com is an online store that buys, sells, trades authentic luxury watches. We make these videos so our customers can easily choose the best watch for themselves in the comfort of their own home. We offer the lowest prices anywhere online. You have to know the price of the watch, simply click on the links in the description below. We greatly appreciate it if you'll buy a watch from jazztime.com once in a while. Today we'll be doing a comparison between two different Royal Oak Offshore chronograph watches. On my left here we have the 26480Ti.00.A027CA.01, and on my right here we have the 26470ST.00.A099CR.01. Of course, as both of those model numbers are quite long and you probably won't remember them off the top of your head, we have the links to them in the description below for you to check out. We'll be covering the dials, bezel, case, crowns, bracelet, or rather straps, clasps, and we'll talk about the movement towards the end of the video. Alright, so jumping right into the dials here, we have sort of two different dial styles for this. The one on my left here for this this offshore watch, we have the chronograph features in a 3, 6 and 9 o'clock position, whereas on the one on my right here we have them at the 6, 9 and 12 o'clock position instead, mainly because the changes of the placement of the date. You can see the date here is located in a small version between the 4 and 5 o'clock position, whereas on here on the right we have it at the 3 o'clock position, actually with a sort of inverted bubble lens for magnification of that date to make it easier to read against the sort of darkish dial. Darkish dial, by what I mean is a brownish dial. The patterning of these two watches are the same in terms of dial pattern. It's called the megatapisserine pattern. It's these sort of large squarish patterns that you see that make up the back of the watch. As you can see, the light sort of shines down on top of it, giving a little highlights onto the tops of the squares, adding a nice little depth to this face of the watch, of course in conjunction with the outer edge of the bezel as well. We have two different outer edge styles for the sort of walls of the watch, still running both the similar bluish color hue, but two different functions. Whereas this one here on my left simply just has the Arabic indices at every hour marker with small white indices to track sort of that elapsed time of a 60 second round, whereas the offshore here on my right is a tachymetric scale or a tachometer scale that you can see that is lined with the Arabic numerals from the 60, then the scale name, and then all the Arabic numerals all around as well. Of course, both of those functions are controlled by their own chronograph features located at the 2 and 4 o'clock positions. Both of them, of course, have their central second hand for the chronograph feature at the 12 o'clock position in the neutral position right now. Whereas there's not too much contrast here on the one on my left, as it's sort of white on white, blue on blue. The one on my right here has a nice contrast of just the white outline, so it be a little bit easier to read on the dial of the watch itself. On my left here, the subdials are a little bit cleaner, I would say. As you can see, very beautiful grayish patterning for each subdial, with the two actual elapsed time subdials, the 30-minute elapsed time at the 3 o'clock and 12-hour elapsed time at the 9 o'clock, being sort of bordered by a nice silver finish to it to give a nice sort of contrast to the face of the watch, and also sort of as a landmarking for the two subdials that are ultimately affected by the chronograph feature. Whereas the one here on my right, we have the 12-hour elapsed time at the 6 o'clock position instead, with the 30-minute elapsed time at the 9 o'clock position here. And then we have the both of them have, of course, the additional subdial to track the current elapsed time or not elapsed time, but just the current seconds on the watch is ticking down. So it's 6 o'clock position here on my left, 12 o'clock position here on my right. Different style of hour markers as well, as you can see, index hour markers with luminosity filling, and then Arabic numerals on my right here with luminosity filling as well. much different, you know, similar in idea, where they just have the hour markers go around dial. Of course, that's how hour markers work, but then slightly cut off by each sub dial as well. You can see cut off at the 6, 3, 6, and 9. This sort of cuts off the 12, 9, and 6, with a little bit of the 8, as you can see there, and a little bit of the 10. But overall, they still mark those missing areas with a small little white indency, just to have sort of that easy to read landmarking as well, so it's not completely forgotten about. Of course, the hands are additionally different style hands as well. We have the hour and minute hand, a little bit chunkier here on my left with this newer style offshore, with the skeletonization towards the center, whereas the one on my right here is just a full on thin mid hour hand and minute hand as well, but fully luminous throughout the whole hand. Okay. So I would actually do want to show you the sort of luminosity on these watches, so you can see the difference of them on the night. So let me go ahead and charge it up real quick here. All right, and shut off my light box. And there we are. So you can see two different styles of two different styles of hour markers, but ultimately same luminosity. Both still going to be easy to read at night. As you can see, luminosity here on the one on my left, beautiful green luminosity tipped by hour, minute, and then you can see the full index landmark with a 2 index at the 12 o'clock position. Whereas the one on my right here, Arabic numerals. Simple as that, with only very minor indices at the 6, 9, and 12 o'clock position. So yeah, there's that. All right, so let me get this light back on here. All right, so let's move on to the bezels now. So basically similar style bezels, beautiful brush finishing that matches vertically with the case as well. You can see beautiful finishing from the case as well, having that nice brush finish. The material that the bezel is made out of is going to be different from both watches. This one has titanium on my left here. This one's titanium. On my right here is full stainless steel. So full titanium, full stainless steel. But similar style, still very similar styles, having that brush finish of the material, and then having the sort of hexagonal screws, nicely high polished to add a nice little contrast to the face of the watch, along with the bordering of the high polish on the outer edge of the bezel as well. Okay. Moving on to the case now. A case is actually where a majority of the differences lie between these two watches, as you know, the one here on my left was actually a newer model released. Even though these are both 42mm watches, which is kind of still a little unusual for offshore watches, as typically offshore watches are 44mm in diameter. So they're much larger watches. But now we have a 2mm decrease shown on both of these watches, but still very different case size, case changes, as I'll show you the updates between the two here in a second. So first off, the thickness of each one is going to be different, and that's because of the movement that each of these watches run. I'll talk more about that later, but you can see the thickness of the two are much different. The newer style 42mm has a nice slimmer profile overall. The case looks almost practically the same here, but it's actually slimmed down in the bezel. You can see how high this one sits all off the case of the watch versus the one here on my left. So it's you know, this one, the one on my left here, would probably fit in the suit cuff, dress cuffs very nicely, where this one's more bold and more in charge, or you know, as it has to stick out, it sits high off the wrist. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking, you know, not only at the size of the watch in terms of just case diameter, which is 42mm, but you also want to look at the height of the watch. So the exact measurements is 12.8mm here on my left, and the one on my right here is 14.5mm, so almost a 2mm difference, which is I don't know, some sort of which doesn't seem like very much at all, but I mean, percentage wise, it's about 20% reduction in terms of overall size. So that's one thing that's changed. Okay, still has the same on the chamfers, so very beautiful high polishing of the chamfers on each one. Both of them still have the nice sizing of the 45-degree angle lugs. As you can see, it connects out at a 45-degree angle, and that helps the watch actually wear a little bit smaller because it fits very nicely and conforms very nicely with the wrist. Instead of jutting out into a longer position, it conforms with the size of conforms with the wrist, and you know, just looks very nice overall when it sort of conforms to it. The next change is here. If you didn't already notice right off the bat, is that the chronograph pushers themselves, for the newer style, we have this very beautiful chronograph pushers at the 2 and 4 o'clock position. Nice rectangular pushers that match with the whole silhouette of the case, which I think looks a lot better than the others. Looks a lot better than the other style. That's my personal preference. You can choose whatever you like, but I think that the nice silhouette shape is kept with these nice rectangular screws that sort of make their way into that V shape into the crown area, whereas this one is sort of, you know, it really is just kind of jutting out with the circular chronograph pushers at the 2 and 4 o'clock position. Not only that, the crown guard is a lot thicker too. You can see that it sits at a larger rectangular shape versus the crown guards on this on the newer style on my left here, which sort of flows naturally with the case of the watch into that crown point. So overall, the sort of older style 42 case or 44 cases, they're a lot chunkier overall, which is not a bad thing. If you're a larger guy, you might want the sort of older style case, so it looks looks a little more complete on your wrist. But you know, if you're looking for something a little more elegant, you might want to just try to get one of these newer style ones, which has this sort of updates to the overall size, which actually help it look a lot more elegant. But anyways, moving on to the crown area, I actually like what Audemars Piguet did here on the left. We're using a nice touch of colors on the chronograph pushers at the 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and even on the crown itself, whereas this one is just, you know, just a simple black on the chronograph pushers and on the crown itself there. Of course, both of them have the same functions. There's no difference between them in the chronograph features. I just want to press it for you so you can just take a quick look at it. I'm not going to go too in depth into it. So 2 o'clock position starts and stops, start, stop, stop, and then reset and reset. All right. Besides that, the crown functions are still the same, so I would recommend you watch the standalone reviews on how to use that. I'm not going to go over it. It's just simply the ability to set the time, change the date, and wind the watch. And that's about it. So moving on to the straps now. So different style straps, of course. We have a nice blue rubber strap on the left here, and then a nice black leather on my right here. Of course, the actual portion that links into the case has a little bit of play in it, of course, so it doesn't feel too stiff on the wrist. As you can see, it does shift around just a little bit. All right, just quickly show you the buckles here. It's not too much to say. Just one's in a titanium, one is in a stainless steel, and there's just simple tang buckles. So here's another one of the big differences, is that for the case back, you can see two different styles of case back. So it has that Royal Oak Offshore with the outer bordering for right next to the screws, but instead of going for the exhibition case back, we've gone for just a nice flat case back that you can see actually reflects light very nicely. You can see it sort of radiates as I tilt it around my light box here, and it sort of catches the light in the sunburst sort of feature. But if you do if you enjoy looking at the movement itself, then you can take a look at the older style, which has the exhibition case back, as Offshores typically do. It has a sapphire crystal, and then you can see the oscillator, the gold oscillator with the coat of arms for Audemars Piguet. Of course, one for each house, one for Audemars, one for Piguet. I believe it's sort of a rook tower with doves, and then on the right is a horse with I believe 3 stars or so. So So there's a difference between that. So it's just, if you enjoy maybe just a simpler case back, you go with a newer style, which just doesn't have the exhibition, whereas the old style has the exhibition. All right. So one thing to notate about this, as we're sort of closing up here and going on to the movement now, is that the movements itself is really what caused these sort of changes to the sizings of these watch in general. So the sort of newer, slimmer AP runs the self-winding caliber 2385 movement, which is a movement that's used in regular Royal Oak watches, not typically in the offshores. If it was used in offshores, I believe it was used in the ladies, which is sort of, I think, the 37 to 38 millimeter ladies watches, because of course it's a smaller movement, so it needs a smaller case. So they sort of adjusted the case size so it can fit that smaller case. The other style, the one that most offshores run, here on my right, the case the movement that runs is a believe a base model 3126 movement, and they call it, I think it's either 3126 and then it's 3840 technically, so base 3126 movement, but then they call it a 3840 because it's a modular movement. So that's one of the main differences between the two movements on these watches. Whereas here on my left, the 2385 movement itself is an integrated chronograph feature where it's added on to this offshore on my right. So what does that mean? What does it mean to have an integrated chronograph versus a chronograph that's been added on the modular movement? So it's kind of the same as if you built the house from the ground up. You've already accounted for the chronograph movement. You know you're going to make this watch with that chronograph movement. So then the sort of smaller issues, or if there are any issues with the chronograph movement, can be solved within the movement itself. Whereas the modular movement, that chronograph feature is added onto a base movement, so that base movement might not be accustomed to that chronograph movement, and just be sometimes speaking a little from experience, is that we do sometimes have troubles with those modular movements not working as well as an integrated movement. It's not the case every single time, but there are it's enough to say that there are some cases where the modular chronograph does have a few issues that we have to take care of with our watchmaker. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that happens every single time, but it does happen. It does happen enough that I would say it. But besides that, they're both still very reliable movements overall. The sizing of these two movements, of why one has that slimmer case, is because that 3126 or the 3840 on my right is actually 29.92 millimeter in diameter movement, whereas the 2385 here on my left, that isn't typically used in the offshores, is a 26.2 millimeter in size. So almost a 3.7 millimeters in difference, which is a large amount, enough for it to obviously cause them to have a substantial change between the two. But besides that, you're looking at a very similar power reserves. I believe it's a 40 for this 40 for this one. I believe it's a 40 for this one as well. So very similar power reserves, meaning you can put the watches down on a Friday evening, pick it back up on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. It'll be keeping time just fine. All right. So besides that, there's probably a few other things that I mentioned about the movement, but it probably wouldn't really matter to just for everyday use. Like, I believe the number of joules on the 3840 was I think it's like 59 different joules or so, whereas on the integrated one is 37 different joules, about 304 parts or so, different parts, and yeah, it's just not really something that would really probably make or break your buying decision. But really, once again, it's the case sizes. So I want to show that once more. So still 42 millimeters each, but much higher profile versus much slimmer profile. Overall silhouette because of the chronograph area. And yeah, so I'm gonna just go ahead and quickly show you these watches on my wrist. So give me a moment here, as these are both tang buckle watches. You do have to give me just a moment to place these two watches on, so I can let you take a look at these. So give me one moment here. So here's those two watches. So here's that blue AP, beautiful coloration, beautiful use of the high polish. Once again, I want to mention that 45-degree angle on the lugs to fit nicely on the wrist makes the watch feel a little bit, wear a little bit smaller, but overall looks like a great size for my wrist. I have an average managed size wrist of a 7-inch wrist. And here's the other AP. So once again, look at those profiles. One just sits much higher. And then once again, look at the overall silhouette shape of that chronograph feature. Actually, didn't even realize, but it actually fits a little bit more comfortably because it sort of has that nice curvature to it. Whereas, you know, this AP, you know, the chronograph pushes do press up a little bit against you. All right, but anyways, it's your personal preference. If you would like either one of these watches for the lowest possible price, check out our website at jazztime.com. We have the lowest prices guaranteed. And if you like the video, please like, comment, subscribe below. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you guys soon.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to model as seen in video, click on it, and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on a mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in JazzTime, plus the brand, model, and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.